to Faith for the Apocalypse. My name is Nick, and this channel is a space for us to come together to talk about faith, politics, and whatever else we want, which today is going to be some history as we are continuing our series, How the Did We Get Here, by exploring Christian nationalism. This video is a part of our weekly Devo video series. If you are interested in signing up for daily Devo emails, you'll get a one-page handout that gives you some more information about the week's topic. You can find more information and sign up at the link below. Also, before we dig into it, click like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications so you will know every week when I post a new video. Now, on to today's topic, Christian nationalism. So, what is Christian nationalism? Let's start with a really basic definition. Christian nationalism is a political ideology that fuses a particular conservative evangelical form of Christianity with national identity. Christian nationalism claims that the nation is inherently Christian and thus should be guided by Christian people and governed by Christian principles and organizations. While Christian nationalism is kind of most loud right now in the United States, there have been Christian nationalist movements in countries around the globe. Now, I mentioned that Christian nationalism fuses national identity with a certain form of evangelical Christianity, and it's important to point out that not all evangelical Christians are Christian nationalists. Christian nationalism has grown out of evangelical communities, but is not inherently tied to the theology. You see, Christian nationalism is all about government, power, and control, whereas evangelical Christianity is about the redemption of the soul and the kind of evangelism of religion to others in order to save their souls and better their lives, rather than through seeking control. Here in the United States, Christian nationalists claim that our country was founded for and by Christians, and that the U.S. has a unique Christian identity and a divine purpose and call to rule over the world. This perspective claims that the United States is superior to every other nation on earth, and American Christians are superior to every other people on earth. Christian nationalists believe that the United States needs to be reclaimed for God through the domination and control of every aspect of society, and a particular branch of this movement, the Seven Mountain Movement, has listed the 7 areas of society that must be controlled by this perspective. And those areas are family, religion, education, media, entertainment, business, and government. Christian nationalists believe that Christians and Christian belief should be prioritized in all aspects of society, and that individuals with other identities or other religious beliefs should be seen as guests or second-class citizens and should always take a backseat to the perspectives of Christians. American Christian nationalists seek to fuse Christian identity, cultural conservatism, and ideas of what it means to be an American or what it means to belong in this country. They seek to define the United States as a Christian nation where conservative Christian ideology guides political and governmental systems. They want to rewrite American history to reflect this myth of an evangelical founding and American moral superiority throughout our history. Finally, they want to exert social and political control by deconstructing American educational systems, limiting pluralism and multiculturalism, enforcing traditional gender roles, rolling back LGBTQ and other civil rights protections, and censoring media and all opposition. At this point, you can probably see that the Christian nationalist political perspective is the one that is currently guiding our country. In fact, the influential Project 2025, which was created and put forth by 100 conservative Christian organization, calls for the radical remaking of the United States and the establishment of a government that is guided by biblical principles, which would be run by a president with kind of sweeping executive power. This plan is something that automatically destroys democracy and goes right against American values. Because that's the thing about Christian nationalism. It is at its heart both anti American and anti Christian. While Christian perspectives and identity and American political history have had a close and complicated relationship throughout our nation's history, Christian nationalist movements as they exist right now can be traced back to the 1920s and debates about public education. Specifically, debates about whether or not public education should include lessons on evolution, as explored in the famous Scopes trial. By 1940, Christian nationalism had solidified a bit as Gerald Lyman Kenneth Smith, a fascist, anti Semite, and anti communist, in 1940 founded the Christian Nationalist Crusade, the Christian Nationalist Party, the America First Party, and his influential newsletter, The Cross and the Flag. Gerald Lyman Kenneth Smith perpetuated a myth of America's Christian founding, which described our founding fathers as evangelicals who envisioned this as a Christian nation that would be guided by Christian principles and would stand as an example to all the world. While Christian nationalist ideas had some popularity in post war America, they didn't start to gain real political power until the founding of the Moral Majority by Baptist preacher and televangelist Jerry Falwell in 1979. The Moral Majority was an American political organization and movement that was associated with the Christian right that was in existence from 1979 until 1980. And it played a key role in mobilizing conservative Christians as a political force and influencing especially Republican presidential policies. The Moral Majority supported Ronald Reagan's bid for presidency and enjoyed a special place of influence during his administration. Although Reagan didn't go as far as the movement had hoped, and in 1980, at the end of his presidency, amongst waning popularity, the Moral Majority was dissolved. We then see a decline in Christian nationalism in the 90s until the religious right kind of reaffirms itself together and begins new campaigns in the early aughts to fight against abortion rights and growing LGBTQ rights legislation. Christian nationalists see a rise in influence in 2001 as George W. Bush is elected president, himself an avowed evangelical Christian. But once again, Christian nationalists are disappointed. Although George W. Bush advances a conservative agenda that they support, he does not go far enough in calling out the forces of evil or attacking the forces of secularization or multiculturalism that the Christian nationalism believes our government should be opposing. As we move forward, we move into Barack Obama's presidency and see a huge rise of involvement in white nationalism as it has close ties to white supremacy. As we have a Black president, there is a pushback towards these kind of conservative and extremist values, which begin to grow and exert more influence, as we saw throughout Trump's first and now second presidency. But why Trump? If the whole point is Christian principles, how can Christian nationalists support someone who so clearly doesn't live out Christian principles or really practice his faith in any real or meaningful way? Well, in order to answer that question, we have to understand Christian nationalists' view of spiritual warfare. You see, Christian nationalists believe that our political and social struggles right now are reflective of a spiritual warfare between the forces of good and evil, between God and the devil. They believe that evil needs to be driven out of American government and culture as Christianity takes over and maintains control. So, in this case of spiritual warfare, we don't necessarily need the most moral leader or the best Christian example. We rather need someone who's willing to go into the trenches and to fight against our enemies. Reagan and George W. Bush may have supported Christian values, but they were not being aggressive enough in the warfare that was required, according to this perspective. You may have noticed by now that Christian nationalist ideology uses violent language that we may not expect to see in a Christian organization or perspective, and that is not by accident. Unfortunately, Christian nationalism has close ties to other extremist and violent movements like white supremacy and American militia movements. Christian nationalists see themselves at war and see the possibility for future bloodshed to be something that cannot be avoided. Many Christian movements that support Christian nationalism also support militarization and heavy weapons ownership and training. Unfortunately, this is a perspective that is not only dangerous because of the ways it seeks to control our political systems, but is dangerous because of the ways that it can bring about violence on large scales. Ultimately, Christian nationalism is both anti American and anti Christian. Its ideology directly confronts and conflicts with the values that are at the core of the other two entities. Being an American is about our representative democracy. It's about our belief in freedom and liberty, or at least that's what we've been told it is. And Christian nationalism seeks to limit that liberty, to dismantle our institutions, and to allow for one powerful individual to drive our entire government, economy, and culture. As Christians, we are called to care for the stranger, to love our neighbor, to pursue justice in every area of our lives. If you've been watching this channel, you know that call to justice is something that we have explored deeply. Christian nationalism calls us towards narcissism, hate, and violence. These aren't things that are a part of Jesus' ministry, and they are forces that are evil and that we are called to resist, speak out against, and stand up to. It is up to all of us to fight the corrupting influence of Christian nationalism, to keep it out of our churches and our communities, as well as our hearts and our own political perspectives. It is up to us to watch out for statements or feelings that center American identity and exceptionalism as a purely Christian undertaking. We have to watch out for impulses to dominate and control rather than lift up and empower others. We have to watch out for voices that are telling us to hate when we know that Jesus is telling us to love. And most importantly, we have to stand up and fight back. We have to call our elected officials and tell them to speak out against the influences of Christian nationalism. We have to talk to those in our families and in our communities in order to let them know of the danger and to highlight the importance of sticking to our values of equity, freedom, community, and solidarity. It is a scary time out there, but being informed about the forces that are organizing against us can help us be ready as we continue in our struggle for justice and love. That is all I have for today. If you are signed up for those daily Devo emails, we have a great week of Devos lined up. On Monday, we've provided some talking points to share so we can educate others around us about Christian nationalism. On Tuesday, we're going to dig into the Bible and talk about our call to care for the stranger. On Wednesday, we'll talk a little bit more about how Christian nationalism kind of takes over our religious spaces and talking about watching out for the signs of its influence. On Thursday, we will talk about how we can politically resist the influence of Christian nationalism in our government. And finally, on Friday, we will care for our soul as we take a break, take a breath, and take a step to refill ourselves amidst this difficult topic. Thank you so much for being here with us. We will be back next week for the third video in this series as we look at the corporate takeover of our religious spaces and belief. Before you go, like this video, comment, tell me what other information you would like to see. I am excited to continue developing my skills and put this information out here, and I am planning my fall schedule. So if you tell me what you want to see, you might just see it on this channel. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week.